It was my 78th birthday. My son and daughter-in-law skipped it, claiming my quiet celebration would be too stressful for her pregnancy. But on that same day, they threw a massive gender reveal party, posting joyous photos, explicitly excluding me. I smiled, a quiet resolve hardening. The next morning, I called my late husband's lawyer. What happens next might surprise you. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. Eleanor, at 78 years young, believed in the enduring power of family, even when that power often felt more like a gentle, fading hum than a vibrant symphony. For weeks, she had been meticulously preparing for her birthday, an occasion she always treated with a quiet reverence, a chance to gather her small, beloved circle. With a fountain pen, its ink flowing like her memories, she'd carefully handwritten each invitation, her cursive letters a testament to an era of thoughtfulness. Each stroke was infused with hope, a quiet prayer for connection. She didn't want a grand affair, merely the warmth of familiar faces, a shared meal, and perhaps a slice of her favorite lemon cake. Her first and most important invitation was for her son, David, and his wife, Chloe. Eleanor had taken extra care with theirs, tucking in a small, separate note. Dearest David and Chloe, it read, I'm so thrilled about the baby. This little one will be a blessing, and I can't wait to meet my grandchild. Please come celebrate my birthday, even if it's just for an hour. The thought of a grandchild, a tiny new life connecting her to the future, filled her with an almost giddy anticipation. Chloe was well into her second trimester now, and Eleanor pictured David, ever the devoted husband, hovering over her, ensuring her comfort. Then there was her daughter, Emily, who lived 2 states away, a distance that had, over the years, created a chasm of missed moments. Emily was a dedicated soccer coach, her life a whirlwind of practices and tournaments, and she had regrettably missed Eleanor's last 2 birthdays, as well as several holiday gatherings. Eleanor understood, of course. She always told herself she did, but a faint ache persisted, a mother's silent longing for her daughter's presence. As the days turned into weeks, the RSVPs began to trickle in, each one a bittersweet confirmation of her shrinking world. Emily called, her voice tinged with genuine regret. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. We have a championship tournament that weekend. I tried to shift things, but it's impossible. Eleanor had swallowed her disappointment and offered a cheerful, don't you worry, darling, just win that trophy. Her sister, Olivia, usually a steadfast presence, sent a card explaining she wasn't feeling well enough to make the journey across town. Then came a text from her nephew, Thomas, a busy young man with a demanding job, excusing himself due to a crucial work deadline. Each message, though kindly delivered, felt like a small stone added to a growing pile in her heart. But it was David and Chloe's silence that truly gnawed at her. She had mailed their invitation almost a month ago. No call, no text, no email, nothing. A week before her birthday, unable to bear the quiet any longer, Eleanor picked up the phone and dialed David directly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she waited for him to answer. Hello, Mom. David's voice came through, sounding a little distant. David, darling, I haven't heard from you and Chloe about my birthday next Saturday, Eleanor said, trying to keep her tone light, belying the anxiety bubbling beneath. There was a noticeable pause on David's end, followed by a faint, muffled voice in the background. Chloe's, Eleanor suspected, though she couldn't make out the words. Then David cleared his throat. Oh, Mom, yeah, about that. We might not be able to make it. Eleanor's heart sank. Oh, is everything all right, dear? Is Chloe feeling unwell? Well, yes, actually, David replied, his voice still hesitant. Her morning sickness has been particularly bad lately, and honestly, the doctor said she needs to take it easy. A lot of rest. Another whisper from Chloe. And, you know, your parties are usually so quiet. It might just be a bit of a stressful situation for her right now, with all the quiet, you know. Eleanor blinked. Stressful? A quiet birthday gathering, just a few people, perhaps a cup of tea and a slice of cake, was a stressful situation? The words hung in the air, cold and sharp, piercing through her carefully constructed hope. She pictured her small, cozy living room, the gentle hum of conversation, the comfortable silence she usually shared with loved ones. Stressful? The insult, though wrapped in concern for Chloe, was unmistakable. It implied her company, her home, her very presence was a burden. "I see," Eleanor managed, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't know what else to say. The receiver felt heavy in her hand, the conversation abruptly finished. Despite the crushing disappointment, a stubborn flicker of hope still burned. Perhaps they would change their minds. Perhaps Chloe would feel better. So Eleanor proceeded. She baked her lemon cake, the scent filling the house with a deceptive warmth. She set out her best china, polished her silver, and even adorned the mantelpiece with a string of fairy lights. By 4 p.m. on her birthday, the house was perfectly decorated. The cake stood proudly on the dining table, and the tea kettle was ready to be boiled. The silence, however, was deafening. No doorbell, no phone call, no unexpected knock. As the afternoon light faded, casting long shadows across her empty living room, Eleanor finally allowed the hollow emptiness to settle. No one was coming. Not David, not Chloe, not anyone. With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of her 78 years, she sank into her armchair. Out of habit, or perhaps a desperate need for connection, she picked up her tablet and opened Facebook. She scrolled idly, looking for anything to distract her from the gnawing loneliness. And then, there it was. A flood of photos posted by Chloe just an hour ago. Bright, vibrant, joyous photos. A gender reveal party. The first photo showed Chloe, radiant and smiling, a blue confetti cannon exploding above her. David stood beside her, his arm wrapped around her, a wide, unrestrained grin on his face. Behind them, a huge banner declared, "It's a boy." The next photo showed a sprawling garden filled with people. Dozens, hundreds it seemed. Colorful balloons, elaborate decorations, a dessert table overflowing with treats, and the caption, boldly written for the world to see. "What an amazing day. So grateful for all our close family and friends who came to celebrate our little man. 200 guests, only close family. Nobody to bother us. Hashtag baby boy, hashtag gender reveal, hashtag blessed. Nobody to bother us." The words echoed in Eleanor's mind, a cruel, deliberate stab. Her quiet, stressful gathering was too much, but a party with 200 guests was perfectly fine. And David, her son, he was laughing in one photo, his head thrown back, a genuine, unburdened laugh. He looked happier, more relaxed than Eleanor had seen him in months, certainly happier than he ever looked when he visited her. In that moment, a profound and chilling realization hardened within Eleanor. They hadn't just forgotten her birthday. They hadn't just been too busy. They hadn't even truly been worried about Chloe's morning sickness. They had actively chosen to exclude her. They had lied. They had deliberately created an elaborate celebration on the very day of her birthday, and they had kept her entirely out of it, all while feigning concern for Chloe's delicate condition. The insult was not just the absence, but the audacious public celebration of her exclusion. A cold, steely resolve began to form in her chest, replacing the lingering ache of hurt. Enough, she closed her tablet, the cheerful blue glow of the screen reflecting dully in her eyes. Slowly, purposefully, Eleanor rose from her armchair. She walked over to an old wooden desk in the corner, a relic from her late husband Arthur's study. With a steady hand, she pulled open the top drawer and reached for Arthur's ancient, leather-bound phone book, its pages thin and yellowed with time. She flipped to the D section, her finger tracing down the names until she found it. Davies and Associates, attorneys at law. She would not weep. She would not rage. She would act. "First thing Monday morning," she murmured to herself as she picked up her landline, her gaze fixed on the phone number. "I need to schedule an appointment for estate planning." Eleanor woke with a jolt, not in her bed, but in Arthur's old armchair, the one by the window that offered a view of the quiet, dew-kissed garden. The morning sun, usually a comforting presence, felt stark against her eyelids. The words, "nobody to bother us," Chloe's casual caption from the previous day, echoed in the stillness of her mind, a cruel refrain. It wasn't just the betrayal of her birthday. It was the final, undeniable thread that unraveled a tapestry of smaller slights, a pattern she had, until now, meticulously ignored or excused. Memories, sharp and unwelcome, began to resurface. Last Christmas, Eleanor had spent hours baking her famous gingerbread cookies, painstakingly decorating each one with intricate icing. She had driven to David and Chloe's house, a small box of festive cheer in hand, hoping to drop off the treats and perhaps share a quick, joyful hug. But Chloe had met her at the door, her smile tight, a forced politeness in her voice. "Oh, Eleanor, thank you, but really you shouldn't have," Chloe had said, not opening the screen door fully. "It's just a very quiet Christmas morning for us. David is still asleep, and I'm feeling a bit overstimulated already." Eleanor, ever considerate, had simply left the gift on the porch, mumbling apologies for disturbing them. As she walked back to her car, she had glanced through the living room window. David wasn't asleep. He was sitting by the fireplace, laughing with Chloe, a mug of something steaming in his hand, a pile of unwrapped presents scattered around them. A private, intimate holiday she wasn't part of. She had dismissed it then, convincing herself that young couples needed their space. Easter had brought another sting. She had learned, not from David or Chloe, but from Emily during one of their infrequent phone calls, that David and Chloe had hosted a lavish dinner party. 12 people, Mom, Emily had recounted, mostly Chloe's friends and some new neighbors they'd met. Chloe even roasted a lamb. Eleanor had merely nodded, feigning disinterest, while a hollow ache had settled deep within her chest. She had spent Easter alone, warmed over casserole for one. The 4th of July, typically a boisterous family affair filled with barbecue, smoke, and laughter, had been the starkest example yet. David had called her days before, assuring her, "Mom, don't worry about us. We're just doing a small thing here, really. Just a couple of friends stopping by for a burger. Nothing formal. You know, Chloe gets overwhelmed easily." Eleanor had understood, or so she told herself. She had spent the day watching fireworks alone from her porch swing. Later that evening, unable to shake a vague unease, she had driven by their house just to check on them, she'd rationalized. What she saw was anything but a small thing. David's backyard was a blaze of fairy lights, filled with people, music, and the unmistakable aroma of grilled food. Children ran across the lawn, sparklers held aloft, while adults mingled, drinks in hand. A lively, vibrant backyard barbecue, full of life and laughter, a world away from her quiet, lonely porch. Each time, Eleanor had been the one to offer help, to extend an olive branch of inclusion. "Let me help you with the wedding planning, Chloe," she had offered, eager to share her experience. "I know some wonderful florists." "David, are you still looking for a new car? I saw a great deal on a sedan that might suit you." "Chloe, I'd love to help paint the nursery or even just organize the baby clothes." Each offer had been met with a polite but firm deflection. "Oh no, we've got it covered, thank you, Eleanor." "That's so sweet, but we're trying to keep things simple. We want to do it ourselves for the personal touch." Eleanor had always retreated, telling herself she was being overbearing, that she needed to respect their independence. She had blamed herself, thinking she was too old, too traditional, too much of a bother. Now the pieces clicked into place, forming a coherent, heartbreaking picture. It wasn't her, it was them. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern of calculated exclusion designed to keep her at arm's length. The sharp ring of the telephone startled her out of her reverie. It was David. His voice, when he spoke, had the familiar, careful tone he always used when he was managing her, a subtle inflection that implied she was fragile, easily upset, or perhaps simply a nuisance. "Hey, Mom," he said too brightly. "Happy belated birthday. How was your day yesterday?" Eleanor gripped the receiver, her knuckles white. She didn't respond with the usual platitudes. Instead, she asked, her voice steady, "David, did you see Chloe's Facebook post?" There was a moment of silence. "Chloe's Facebook post? What about it, Mom?" His feigned ignorance was almost comical, if it weren't so deeply painful. "The one about the gender reveal party," Eleanor continued, her voice unwavering. "The one with 200 guests for close family, where nobody would bother you." The words felt like ash in her mouth. Another pause, longer this time. Then David exhaled, a sound of theatrical exasperation. "Oh, that, Mom, honestly, that was just a small thing that got a little out of hand. You know how Chloe is with her social media. It wasn't meant to be a big deal. And anyway, the main thing is that Chloe is doing great. and the baby is healthy. That's all that matters, right? He launched into a monologue about Chloe's latest doctor's appointment, the baby's strong heartbeat, the nursery colors they were considering. He was constantly redirecting, veering away from her feelings, her experience, her birthday. He was using the baby, his most potent shield, to deflect her pain. David, Eleanor interrupted, her voice firm, cutting through his monologue. We need to talk, not about the baby's latest ultrasound. We need to talk about us, and it won't be over the phone. Another silence. This one felt different. This one felt less like an evasion and more like genuine confusion. Talk about what, Mom? I thought we were talking. In that moment, Eleanor realized something profound and unsettling. David wasn't just being dismissive, he was genuinely bewildered. He had normalized her exclusion to such an extent that he couldn't even see the chasm he and Chloe had dug between them. Her absence, her loneliness, her pain, none of it registered as anything out of the ordinary for him. She was simply an inconvenient truth he had learned to neatly package and store away. You'll see, Eleanor said, a quiet finality in her tone. We'll talk soon. And then she hung up before he could deflect again. She walked through her quiet house, past the empty dining table where her untouched birthday cake still stood. Her gaze drifted to a shelf lined with old photographs. David as a chubby-cheeked toddler, David graduating from high school, David beaming on his wedding day. Each photo depicted a bond that now felt irrevocably severed. The cheerful, innocent face of her son in those pictures bore little resemblance to the man who had just lied to her, dismissed her, and actively excluded her. The ache in her heart was still there, a dull throb, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A clarity, a resolve. She knew now what she had to do. Eleanor returned to Arthur's desk, pulled out a fresh legal pad and a pen. Mr. Davies would need details. Lots of details. This wasn't just about her money or her estate. It was about choosing herself, finally, after years of letting herself be quietly, politely erased. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the emotional fog that had enveloped Eleanor for weeks. She dressed with a quiet determination, selecting a formidable navy suit that had belonged to Arthur's mother, a woman known for her unwavering resolve. It was a suit for serious business, for decisions that carried weight, and Eleanor felt every bit the woman who would make them. With her old phone book still clutched in her hand, she confirmed the address for Davies and Associates. The law office was hushed, smelling faintly of old paper and ambition. Mr. Davies, a man with shrewd eyes and a meticulously organized desk, greeted her with a polite, albeit slightly surprised, smile. He had known Arthur for decades and had handled Eleanor's modest estate planning since her husband's passing. He ushered her into his office, offering a cup of tea, which she politely declined. Eleanor sat upright in the leather chair opposite his desk, her posture radiating a newfound strength. Mr. Davies, she began, her voice steady, I've come to make some significant changes to my will. He nodded, pen poised over a legal pad. Certainly, Eleanor. What did you have in mind? I wish to remove my son, David, and my daughter-in-law, Chloe, as beneficiaries entirely, she stated, the words clear and unhesitating. Mr. Davies paused, his pen hovering midair. His eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of surprise in his usually impassive gaze. Entirely, Eleanor? May I ask what prompted such a significant decision? Eleanor took a deep breath, the memories of the past few days and indeed the past few years flooding her mind. She recounted the birthday, the empty house, the untasted cake. She spoke of David's dismissive phone call, the casual lie about Chloe's stressful pregnancy. Then she pulled out her tablet, displaying Chloe's Facebook post, the bright, joyful photos of the gender reveal party with 200 guests, and the cruel caption, "Nobody to bother us." She detailed the insidious pattern of exclusion, the quiet Christmas morning, that was in fact a lively private celebration, the small thing on the 4th of July that was a full-blown barbecue, the Easter dinner for 12 that she'd only heard about secondhand. She spoke not with anger, but with a weary clarity, a calm understanding of years of subtle, yet deliberate emotional distancing. This decision, Mr. Davies, she concluded, placing the tablet back in her purse, is not made in anger or a fit of pique. It is based on clarity. I have finally seen my family situation for what it truly is. I have spent too long trying to understand, to excuse, to diminish my own feelings. I won't do that anymore. Mr. Davies listened intently, his expression shifting from surprise to a more understanding gravity. He closed his pad for a moment, resting his hands on it. I understand, Eleanor. This is certainly a difficult situation. Difficult, perhaps, Eleanor conceded, but also illuminating. Now, to the more positive aspect. A faint smile touched her lips. I want to establish a substantial trust fund for my great-grandchild, Lily Grace. Mr. Davies opened his pad again, making a note. Lily Grace, a beautiful name. And the terms of this trust, Eleanor? I want the funds to be held securely, entirely inaccessible to David and Chloe, until Lily Grace turns 25 years old. At that point, she should have full control over it. It's for her future, her education, whatever she needs to build a life free from, well, from the influences that might otherwise derail her. The unspoken implication hung in the air. Free from the influence of parents who had shown themselves to be manipulative and self-serving. And the remainder of your estate? Mr. Davies inquired. Eleanor's estate, while not vast, was substantial, comprising her house, investments, and some valuable antiques. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. For the remainder, I want to research charities, organizations that actually help people, Mr. Davies. Organizations that include, that nurture, that uplift, instead of excluding them. I want my legacy to do good in the world, to support genuine kindness and community. Mr. Davies nodded slowly. A very thoughtful approach, Eleanor. I will draft a preliminary document reflecting these changes and the establishment of the trust. This will give you time to consider everything, to be absolutely certain before we finalize anything. As he spoke, Eleanor felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. A sense of control had returned, a quiet power she had forgotten she possessed. It was a strange mix of vindication and sorrow, a bittersweet taste of freedom. One more thing, Mr. Davies, Eleanor added, just as he was gathering his notes. I want all of this to remain strictly confidential, especially from David and Chloe. They are not to know a word of it, not until after Lily Grace is born. I don't want this to be seen as a manipulative gesture, to try and force them to change. This is my decision, final and firm, regardless of their future actions. He nodded, understanding. Understood, Eleanor. Confidentiality is paramount. Leaving the law office, Eleanor felt strangely empty, yet also lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The feeling was profound, almost overwhelming. Who could she share this with? Who would truly understand? Not Emily, whose life was too busy and whose reactions were often tempered by a desire for family harmony. Not Olivia, who was unwell. There was only one person, Beatrice, her oldest friend, a woman who had seen her through every joy and sorrow for over 50 years. Eleanor drove straight to Beatrice's cozy bungalow, where the scent of baking bread often mingled with the aroma of strong coffee. Beatrice, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, enveloped Eleanor in a warm hug. Eleanor, dear, what a surprise. Come in, come in. Over cups of hot tea and slices of Beatrice's famous shortbread, Eleanor poured out the full, unsanitized truth. The birthday, the gender reveal, the years of subtle slights, the dawning realization of her own exclusion. She didn't hold back, not with Beatrice. She spoke of her hurt, her anger, and finally her resolution. Beatrice listened patiently, her kind eyes full of empathy. When Eleanor finished, a silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Then Beatrice reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Oh, Eleanor, she said softly, my heart breaks for you. But you know, sometimes families need to earn their place in our lives. Blood relation or not, respect and kindness are not automatic entitlements. You've been so strong, putting up with so much for so long. Now it's time to choose yourself. Eleanor felt a tear trickle down her cheek, the first she had shed since her birthday. It wasn't a tear of sorrow, but of release. After her visit with Beatrice, a different kind of resolve settled over Eleanor. It wasn't just about making legal changes. It was about understanding the full extent of the emotional landscape she had been navigating, or rather, struggling within. Back in the quiet solitude of her home, she returned to her tablet, not for distraction, but for dissection. She began meticulously scrolling through Chloe's past Facebook posts, not just for the past year, but going back further, looking for patterns, for clues, for confirmation of the insidious exclusion she now recognized. What she found was a painful tapestry woven with careful omissions and curated portrayals. There were photos of David's surprise birthday party from 2 years ago, an event Eleanor had only heard about secondhand from a distant cousin. 30 smiling faces beamed back from the screen, friends, colleagues, Chloe's family, all gathered around David as he cut a cake, his face genuinely surprised and delighted. Eleanor, his own mother, hadn't even received an invitation. At the time, she had simply accepted David's explanation that it was just a small thing Chloe threw together with a few work friends. Now, the images screamed a different truth. Then came the Mother's Day posts. Chloe, glowing, cradling her belly in one, laughing with David in another, all celebrating herself as a mother-to-be. There was no mention of Eleanor, no acknowledgement of the woman who had brought David into the world, no appreciative nod from David himself. It was as if Eleanor and her role as a mother simply ceased to exist in their carefully constructed narrative. Scrolling further, Eleanor stumbled upon Christmas photos from 2 years prior, a time she distinctly remembered spending alone, warming a small, frozen turkey dinner for one. The photos showed Chloe and David hosting a large, festive gathering, captioned, "Our chosen family, so grateful for this wonderful crew." A group of 20 or more people, laughing, exchanging gifts, sharing a lavish feast. Chosen family? The phrase stung, implying that Eleanor, the actual family, had been deliberately unchosen. Each photo, each caption, cemented a chilling realization within Eleanor. This wasn't accidental or merely a byproduct of busy lives. This was a deliberate construction of a life that didn't include her. David and Chloe weren't just living their lives. They were actively building a social world where Eleanor, her existence, her role as mother and grandmother, simply didn't exist. They had, through consistent, subtle actions and carefully worded excuses, convinced themselves, and perhaps others, that her absence was natural, even necessary. A cold knot formed in Eleanor's stomach. She needed to know if others saw it, if anyone had bought into this narrative. She hesitated for a moment, then dialed Emily's number. Emily, her daughter, her confidant, despite the distance. "Hi, Mom, everything okay?" Emily's voice was cheerful, perhaps a little too cheerful. "Emily," Eleanor began, her voice carefully neutral, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, no sugarcoating." "Okay?" Emily sounded wary. "Have David or Chloe ever said anything to you about me? About my behavior?" There was a long pause on the other end, long enough for Eleanor's heart to pound with anticipation. Finally, Emily sighed. "Mom, look, it's nothing bad. Chloe just mentioned a few times that you were, well, calling a lot lately, and that you seemed a bit lonely. She said you were perhaps a little too dependent on David for company." The words hung in the air, each one a tiny shard of glass. Too dependent. Lonely. Calling a lot. It was exactly what Eleanor had feared. "And what did David say?" Eleanor pressed, her voice tighter now. "David just agreed, you know. He said you sometimes seem to have a lot of free time, and that you probably need more social outlets." "Social outlets?" Eleanor echoed, incredulous. "Yes," Emily continued, her voice gaining a defensive edge. "They suggested you might really enjoy a senior center. Or a bridge club. Chloe even looked up some activities for you. They were just concerned for your social well-being, Mom. They thought it would be good for you to make some new friends, to have things to do besides calling them." Eleanor felt a wave of cold clarity wash over her. It wasn't concern, it was a ploy, a carefully constructed narrative to justify their exclusion and to redirect her attention away from them. It was a gentle push, dressed up as caring, to get her out of their hair, to sever the last threads of connection. "Did it ever occur to you, Emily?" Eleanor asked, her voice low and dangerous. that maybe I call David not because I'm lonely or dependent, but because he's my son and because I love him, and that perhaps I would like to be included in his life rather than farmed out to a senior center? Emily squirmed even through the phone line. Mom, that's not fair. Everyone just wants what's best for you. They care about you, of course they do. Her tone was conciliatory but hollow. In that moment, Eleanor understood the depth of the deception. Her own children, David and now Emily, had been convinced by Chloe's narrative. They saw her not as a loving mother, but as a burden, not as a matriarch, but as an inconvenience. She was, in their carefully managed reality, too needy, too lonely, too much. The pain was immense, but it was accompanied by a strange, liberating understanding. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't the problem. They were, and now she knew what she had to do. If you're finding Eleanor's journey of discovery as compelling as I am, please make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to stay tuned for what happens next. For 3 sleepless nights, Eleanor had wrestled with the revelations from her conversation with Emily. The idea that she was being portrayed as too needy, too lonely, too dependent churned in her mind. But was it just Emily, or had this insidious narrative spread further? Eleanor felt an urgent, almost desperate need to discover how deep Chloe's carefully constructed web of manipulation ran. She needed to expose the truth, not just for herself, but to understand the extent of the damage. Her first call, under the pretense of concern, was to her sister, Olivia. Olivia, who was prone to illness and often kept to herself, relied on Eleanor for much of her social interaction. Eleanor worried about her, genuinely. "How are you feeling, dear heart?" Eleanor asked, her voice soft with genuine affection. "Are you taking your medication?" Olivia, pleased by the attention, soon diverted the conversation. "Oh, I'm all right, Eleanor. You know, David called me last week. Such a thoughtful boy. Checked in on me. Not many young men take the time these days." Eleanor's grip tightened on the phone. David? Calling Olivia? A cold dread began to seep into her. "He did?" she prompted, feigning casual interest. "What did he say?" "Well, he mostly asked about you, actually," Olivia confided, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "He sounded quite concerned. Said he was worried about you adjusting to their new life stage, with the baby coming and all. He suggested, quite gently, that perhaps you might benefit from some professional help. Just someone to talk to help you process things." Eleanor felt a sickening lurch in her stomach. Professional help. Therapy. David had discussed her mental well-being with Olivia, implying she needed psychological intervention simply for wanting to be included in her own son's life. The audacity, the calculated cruelty of it, took her breath away. It wasn't just about painting her as needy, it was about pathologizing her entirely normal maternal feelings. Still reeling, Eleanor moved on to her next target, her nephew Thomas. Thomas, diligent and busy but always respectful. She tried to keep her voice even, devoid of the tremor she felt inside. "Thomas, dear, it's Eleanor. I hope I'm not disturbing you at work." "Aunt Eleanor, no, of course not. What can I do for you?" "I was just wondering, has Chloe ever reached out to you recently?" Eleanor asked, bracing herself. "Chloe? Oh yeah, actually she did, a few months back," Thomas confirmed. "She called me asking if I'd noticed anything different about you. Said she was concerned about your emotional well-being. Asked if you seemed a little clingy." Clingy, the word hit Eleanor with the force of a physical blow. Thomas, a young man she had watched grow up, was now hearing a narrative crafted by Chloe, portraying Eleanor as a burden. "She painted herself as such a caring daughter-in-law, Thomas continued, unaware of the devastation his words inflicted. "Concerned about you managing with everything, with David being so busy with work and the baby coming. She said she was trying her best to manage an increasingly needy mother, but it was a lot." Eleanor's blood ran cold. An increasingly needy mother. The phrase cemented it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated campaign. Chloe hadn't just been excluding her. She had been systematically contacting family members, planting seeds of concern, meticulously constructing a false narrative to validate her actions and isolate Eleanor further. She had rebranded Eleanor's natural attempts at connection as symptoms of emotional instability or neediness. The realization ignited a fierce, protective fire within Eleanor. She couldn't let this stand. She had to fight back, not with anger, but with knowledge. Leaving her phone on the hook, Eleanor grabbed her purse and car keys. She drove straight to the public library, a place she hadn't visited in years. She spent hours there, poring over books on emotional manipulation, gaslighting, and family alienation. The quiet hum of the library became a backdrop to her accelerated pulse as she devoured every word. The patterns leaped out at her with chilling clarity: the gradual isolation of the target, the reframing of normal behaviors, like a mother calling her son, as problematic or unhealthy, the recruitment of flying monkeys, other family members, to validate the new fabricated narrative. Chloe wasn't just subtly manipulative, she was a master strategist, systematically dismantling Eleanor's support system and reputation within the family. The sheer audacity of it, the cold calculation, left Eleanor both horrified and strangely empowered. She wasn't crazy, she wasn't needy, she was a target, and now she understood the game. With a renewed sense of purpose, Eleanor pulled out her phone. She called Mr. Davies directly, scheduling another appointment for the following day. This time, her instructions for the trust would be even more specific, even more airtight. "Mr. Davies," she stated the next morning, her voice resonating with unwavering conviction, "I've given more thought to Lily Grace's trust. The conditions for accessing the funds will require her to personally contact me, or a representative I designate, when she turns 18 and again at 25. She paused, her gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the lawyer's office window. "I want the child to know explicitly that this money came from their great-grandmother who loved them before they were even born. It's not from her parents, it's from Mama, and I want that message to be clear in the legal documents if possible." Mr. Davies scribbled notes, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "That can certainly be arranged, Eleanor. It's a powerful statement. And for the remainder of my estate," Eleanor continued, her voice gaining strength, "I want to establish a foundation dedicated to helping isolated or abandoned elderly people, a place where they can find community, support, and feel valued, a place that stands for inclusion, not exclusion." The decision felt right, a perfect counterpoint to the years of silent suffering. Her legacy would not be defined by the actions of those who had sought to erase her, but by her own enduring spirit of love and connection. In the weeks following her decisive meeting with Mr. Davies, Eleanor embarked on a quiet yet profound transformation. The emotional manipulation, once a subtle poison, now felt like a broken spell. She ceased her weekly calls to David, a ritual she had maintained for decades. She waited, half expecting his phone to ring with a query, a concern, a simple, "Are you all right, Mom?" But the phone remained silent. He didn't notice. He didn't reach out. Her absence, it seemed, was not even a ripple in his carefully constructed life. She also stopped sending Chloe the stream of articles on pregnancy and childcare, the thoughtful little gifts for the nursery, the hand-knitted booties she had been working on. She had anticipated some kind of inquiry, perhaps a message asking if everything was okay. Instead, the silence from their end was palpable, almost a relief. Her attempts at connection, once dismissed as neediness, were no longer there to bother them. The quiet satisfaction she felt at their indifference was a strange, bittersweet comfort. Instead of dwelling on what she was losing, Eleanor began to actively build a new life. She reconnected with Beatrice, their weekly tea sessions now filled with laughter and genuine camaraderie, a stark contrast to the strained politeness she'd grown accustomed to with David and Chloe. She reached out to other old friends she had unintentionally neglected, women whose lives had been put on hold while Eleanor poured her energy into a family that didn't reciprocate. Luncheons, garden visits, and heartfelt phone calls filled the spaces that David and Chloe's absence had created. She joined a local book club, finding intellectual stimulation and lively discussions that sparked her mind in ways it hadn't been in years. The quiet hours she once spent fretting over her son now turned into spirited debates about literature. Then, one afternoon, she saw an advertisement for volunteers at a local nursing home. The thought resonated deeply within her. She knew what it felt like to feel isolated, overlooked, and pushed aside. Volunteering quickly became a profound source of joy and purpose. She spent her afternoons reading to residents, helping with activities, or simply listening to their stories. It was there, amidst the gentle rhythm of the nursing home, that she met Susan, a 75-year-old former English teacher with a twinkle in her eye and a dry wit. Susan, like Eleanor, had a son and daughter-in-law. "Oh, the stories I could tell you, Eleanor," Susan chuckled one afternoon as they folded laundry together. "It's a common tale, I've come to realize. We reach a certain age and our children decide they know what's best for us. We're managed rather than included. It's always for our social well-being, or because we're fragile, or need special care." Eleanor nodded, a shared understanding passing between them. "They really believe they're doing the right thing, don't they?" Eleanor mused, reflecting on David's conviction. "Absolutely," Susan affirmed. "They genuinely think they're protecting us, making our lives easier. They don't see the condescension, the dismissal. They don't see that they're isolating us under the guise of care." Their conversations were a balm to Eleanor's soul, a confirmation that her experience was not unique and her feelings were valid. She was not alone in this particular form of quiet grief. 6 weeks after Eleanor's birthday, as the autumn leaves began to turn golden, Chloe made another announcement on Facebook. "Baby boy's name reveal." The post featured a video of David proudly writing 2 names on a chalkboard, his face alight with excitement. The names were Lily Grace and Arthur David. Eleanor, scrolling through her tablet at the kitchen table, felt a sharp pang. Lily Grace, the name she had chosen for the trust. And then, Arthur, her late husband's name. It was a beautiful, thoughtful gesture, a tribute to a man David had adored. But the pang was not just of sentimental recognition. It was the familiar, painful jolt of learning something so intimately personal, so profoundly significant to her family, through the impersonal medium of social media. It was another reminder of her continued exclusion, a confirmation that she was not part of the inner circle where such decisions were made. She closed her eyes, remembering Arthur. He had been a man of immense warmth and integrity, deeply devoted to his family. He had cherished every holiday, every birthday, every small gathering as a sacred occasion for connection. David, his son, had strayed so far from that inclusive, loving example. The irony of his son bearing the name Arthur, yet behaving in a manner so contrary to his father's values, was a bitter pill to swallow. That night, unable to shake the lingering feeling, Eleanor made another call to Mr. Davies. "James," she began, using his first name for the first time, a sign of their evolving, more personal relationship, "I need to add a further condition to Lily Grace's trust, or perhaps Arthur David's trust, if that is indeed the chosen name." "Certainly, Eleanor. What is it?" "If they name him Arthur David," she explained, her voice softening, "I want a letter written from Arthur's perspective to be included with the trust documents. A letter explaining what family meant to him, his values, the importance of love, respect, and inclusion. Something for the child to read when they come of age and access the funds." Mr. Davies was silent for a moment. "A very touching idea, Eleanor. A beautiful way to connect the generations." "It's not confrontational, James," Eleanor clarified, anticipating any misinterpretation. "It's educational. It's about ensuring Arthur's true legacy, his spirit, lives on, perhaps through his grandson, in a way his son has forgotten." As she hung up the phone, a deep, settled peace enveloped Eleanor. She was no longer fighting for a place at a table that refused to set a seat for her. She was building her own table, filling it with genuine connections, and ensuring that her true legacy, one of love, inclusion, and principled action, would endure. She was no longer trying to earn her place in a family that had decided she didn't deserve one. She was simply living. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March, a day Eleanor had long awaited with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She was having breakfast with Beatrice, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling Beatrice's cheerful kitchen. The phone rang, startling them both. It was David. "Mom, she's here. She's finally here." His voice was a mix of pure elation and utter exhaustion, an uncharacteristic break in his usual composed demeanor. "Oh, David, darling, how wonderful. Is everything all right? Is Chloe okay?" Eleanor's heart fluttered with genuine excitement, the maternal instincts she had long suppressed bubbling to the surface. "Everyone's great, Mom. Chloe was amazing. It was a long night, but she was incredible. And the baby, she's perfect, Mom. Absolutely perfect. We named her Lily Grace." Lily Grace, Eleanor felt a small, almost imperceptible pang of recognition. They had chosen the name she had focused on, not Arthur David. It was a subtle detail, another small exclusion in the grand pattern of her erasure, but she acknowledged it without dwelling. This moment was about new life. "Lily Grace," Eleanor repeated, her voice genuinely warm. "What a beautiful name, David. Congratulations, truly. I'm so happy for you both. And for Chloe, how is she recovering?" David launched into a detailed account of the birth, his voice thick with emotion, describing Lily's tiny fingers, her full head of dark hair, the adorable way she scrunched her nose. Beatrice, across the table, watched Eleanor's face carefully, a silent observer to the complex emotions playing out. Eleanor smiled, nodded, and offered appropriate exclamations of delight. Beneath the joy, however, a quiet resolve remained. "You have to come meet her, Mom," David said, his voice suddenly less formal. "This weekend. Are you free this weekend?" A sudden inclusion. After months of being deemed too much trouble, too needy, too stressful, she was suddenly needed. Eleanor understood. The exhaustion, the overwhelming reality of a newborn, the sudden vulnerability. It often brought even the most self-sufficient parents back to the warmth of their own mothers. She accepted, her tone gracious. "Yes, darling, I'd love to. Just let me know what time works best for Chloe." That afternoon, Eleanor made a purposeful trip to her bank. She retrieved the carefully prepared trust documents from her safety deposit box, along with the two letters. One was for Lily Grace, a letter explaining the trust in her great-grandmother's love. The other, she knew, would never be read, as it was only if the name Arthur had been chosen. There was also a third secret letter she had written for David and Chloe. It was not intended for the legal documents, but for their eyes only. It was a letter that, in quiet but firm terms, explained her perspective, detailing the emotional costs of their behavior, the years of exclusion, the deliberate manipulation. It was her truth, finally articulated. On Saturday, Eleanor dressed with care, choosing a soft blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She wanted to appear as the loving, serene great-grandmother she truly was, a stark contrast to the needy or stressful image they had cultivated. Into her sturdy leather purse, she tucked the trust documents, a small, beautifully crocheted blanket she had finished just weeks before, embroidered with Lily Grace's initials, and the third letter. When she arrived at David and Chloe's house, Chloe herself answered the door, looking exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. Lily Grace. Eleanor's heart melted instantly. The baby was indeed perfect, a miniature marvel, her tiny face a canvas of emerging features. "Eleanor, thank you for coming," Chloe said, a genuine smile gracing her tired face. David appeared from the living room, looking older, more serious, his eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. He gave Eleanor a quick, almost awkward hug. "Mom, thanks for making the trip." Eleanor gently took Lily Grace into her arms, the warmth of the tiny body a jolt to her senses. Tears pricked her eyes as she looked down at the infant, the purest symbol of hope and new beginnings. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, "she's absolutely beautiful." For a while, the conversation flowed easily. Chloe, flushed with new motherhood, seemed to genuinely relax in Eleanor's presence. She asked about David's infancy, the trials and triumphs of his first few months. "How did you ever manage with David's colic, Eleanor? He cries so much." Eleanor offered advice, sharing anecdotes, feeling a faint flicker of hope that perhaps, with this new life, a bridge could finally be built. Then the moment shattered. Chloe's phone rang, a bright, insistent jingle. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway. Eleanor could hear fragments of the conversation. "Yes, of course. All the grandparents, big family dinner next week, David's parents, my parents, everyone will be there." Eleanor froze, the warmth in her chest turning to ice. "All the grandparents, big family dinner next week." It was a familiar, sickening punch to the gut. It meant Eleanor was not included. She was still the singular grandmother, managed separately, slotted into a convenient, isolated slot in their lives. She was not part of the everyone. David, seemingly oblivious to Eleanor's sudden stillness, walked over. "Mom," he began, his voice lowered, a hint of that familiar, managing tone creeping back in. "When you plan your next visit, you might want to coordinate with Chloe's parents, to avoid too much overlap. It can be a lot for Chloe, having everyone here at once." Eleanor looked at him, truly looked at him, holding her tiny, innocent great-granddaughter in her arms. The hope, fragile and fleeting, extinguished completely. She was still too much, still an inconvenience. The suggestion from David that Eleanor coordinate with Chloe's parents to avoid too much overlap landed like a final definitive blow. The fragile hope Eleanor had briefly entertained that the arrival of Lily Grace might mend the fractured family dynamic shattered completely. She looked at her son, then at Chloe, who was still on the phone, oblivious to the quiet devastation she had just wrought. Eleanor took a deep, steadying breath. "Of course, David," she responded, her voice calm, devoid of any hint of the turmoil raging within her. "I understand completely." The words were an acknowledgement, not of acceptance, but of understanding the game they continued to play. She gently handed Lily Grace back to Chloe, whose phone call had just ended. "She's a precious gift, Chloe," Eleanor said softly, offering a genuine, if bittersweet, smile. Then from her purse, Eleanor retrieved the soft crocheted blanket with Lily Grace's embroidered initials. "This is for her," she said, presenting it to Chloe. "Something for her to cuddle." Chloe's eyes lit up. "Oh, Eleanor, it's beautiful. Thank you so much." Then Eleanor reached deeper into her purse and pulled out the elegant, leather-bound folder containing the trust documents. She handed it directly to David. "And this," she announced, her voice even, though a steeliness underscored each word, "is something more substantial for Lily Grace's future." David and Chloe's faces instantly lit up with surprise and gratitude. A generous gift. Their expressions were almost mirror images, wide-eyed, a little overwhelmed, clearly anticipating some kind of financial contribution, perhaps a bond or a savings account. Chloe, her curiosity piqued, immediately opened the folder, her fingers fumbling slightly with the clasp. Her eyes scanned the first page, her initial excitement quickly giving way to confusion, then a dawning incomprehension. "What is this, Eleanor?" Chloe asked, her brow furrowed, a slight edge of suspicion creeping into her tone. "It's a trust fund, dear," Eleanor explained, her voice steady. "A substantial one for Lily Grace. It's designed to provide for her future, her education, her independence." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The funds are held for her directly. She will be the only one authorized to access them, beginning on her 18th birthday and again when she turns 25. She will need to contact Mr. Davies or his designated representative personally at those times." David, who had been peering over Chloe's shoulder, finally found his voice. "Wait, Mom, why would Lily have to contact Mr. Davies directly? Why wouldn't we, as her parents, manage the funds for her?" His tone was laced with bewilderment and a hint of something darker. "Because, David," Eleanor stated, her gaze unwavering, meeting his directly, "this is Lily's money, not yours, and she'll be the only one authorized to access it." The implication hung heavy in the air. You, her parents, cannot be trusted with this. "There's also a letter," Eleanor continued, her voice softening slightly, "included in those documents. It's for Lily Grace, a letter from her great-grandmother. It explains the origin and the structure of the trust. A letter from her great-grandmother who loved her before she was born, but who won't be a part of her life because her parents found me too inconvenient." The room fell into a thick, suffocating silence. The air seemed to crackle with the weight of Eleanor's words. Chloe's face, which had been pale with confusion, now seemed to drain of all color, her lips parting in a silent gasp. David looked as though he had been physically slapped, his eyes wide with shock, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Mom, what are you talking about?" David stammered, finally finding his voice, a desperate, frantic edge to it. "What inconvenience? We never said you were inconvenient." "You didn't have to say it, David," Eleanor replied, her voice filled with a quiet, profound sorrow. "You just lived it. You lived it when my birthday was too stressful for Chloe, but a party for 200 guests where nobody would bother you was perfectly acceptable on the very same day. You lived it with every family dinner I learned about on Facebook, with every small gathering that was, in fact, a lavish party, and with every offer of help that was politely, firmly deflected. Chloe, who had been silently reading further into the document, suddenly gasped. Her eyes darted from the page to Eleanor, a look of incredulity and dawning fury on her face. This, this is a huge amount of money, Eleanor. This is about 40% of your total estate. Indeed, Eleanor confirmed, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. And the remainder, the other 60%, is going to a foundation dedicated to helping isolated or abandoned elderly people, people like me who find themselves on the fringes of their families. David's shock quickly transformed into anger. Mom, you can't be serious. This is insane. We can fix this. We can talk about this. He took a step towards her, his face flushed. Eleanor held up a hand, stopping him. Her gaze was steady, unyielding. This is not about fixing anything, David. This is me telling you exactly what your choices have cost you. Not with words, but with actions that speak far louder. This is emotional blackmail. Chloe spat, her voice tight with suppressed rage, clutching the document to her chest. Eleanor met her gaze, unflinching. Emotional blackmail is what you have been doing to me for 2 years, Chloe. Manipulating my feelings, twisting my actions, and systematically alienating me from my own family under the guise of concern. This isn't blackmail. This is consequences. She turned, ready to leave, a profound sense of finality settling over her. Mom, please don't leave like this, David pleaded, his voice cracking, a desperate appeal in his eyes. Eleanor paused at the doorway, turning back to face her son, the man who was now a father but who had forgotten the fundamental lessons of being a son. David, she said, her voice soft but firm, you are going to be an excellent father. I have no doubt about that. But you have forgotten how to be a good son. Maybe someday, Lily Grace will teach you the difference. With that, Eleanor walked out, leaving them in the silent, echoing aftermath of her truth. 6 months later, Eleanor sat on her porch swing, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves in her ancient oak tree. The afternoon sun dappled through the branches, painting shifting patterns on the weathered floorboards. She felt more at peace than she had in years, a quiet, settled contentment that had replaced the gnawing ache of loneliness. Beatrice sat beside her, sipping iced tea, their easy companionship a comforting presence. The aftermath of that Saturday had been a whirlwind of emotional fallout. David had called her 17 times in the first week, his messages a chaotic mix of anger, confusion, and desperate pleading, but notably never an ounce of understanding or apology for his actions. He accused her of cruelty, of abandoning her own family, of being vindictive. He couldn't see past his own pain to acknowledge hers. Chloe, to her credit, had brought Lily Grace for a visit a few weeks later, an olive branch offered with a tentative smile, but it was clear her true aim was to soften Eleanor's resolve. Eleanor, holding her great-granddaughter, had gently but firmly explained her decision, recounting the systematic exclusion, the calculated narrative, the years of feeling unseen and unheard. Chloe had listened, her face tight, but offered no genuine remorse, only vague excuses. The visit had ended politely, but the chasm remained. Emily had called too, her voice tinged with accusation. Mom, you're punishing them for normal boundary setting. You're destroying our family over something trivial. Eleanor realized then that Emily too was fully steeped in Chloe's narrative, unable to see beyond the carefully constructed illusion of Eleanor as the demanding, needy matriarch. But not everyone. Thomas, her nephew, had called a month after the incident, his voice genuinely contrite. And Eleanor, he'd begun, I've been thinking about what we talked about, and I'm really sorry, I didn't see it. I didn't realize what Chloe was doing. I just thought she was being concerned, like she said. You weren't being needy. You were just being a grandmother. It was the first external validation, the first crack in the wall of gaslighting. And it brought a quiet comfort to Eleanor's heart. Her volunteer work at the nursing home continued to ground her. Listening to the stories of other residents, Eleanor gained a deeper understanding. Most adult children, she realized, weren't malicious. They were often overwhelmed, juggling careers, their own young families, and the demands of modern life. They prioritized convenience, and sometimes that meant finding the easiest way to manage an aging parent, even if it meant sidelining them. Eleanor found a profound peace in this understanding. She let go of the anger, the sharp edge of betrayal, though a quiet sadness about losing her place in her immediate family remained, a dull ache rather than a searing wound. David's really struggling with parenthood, you know, Eleanor confided to Beatrice, breaking the comfortable silence. Chloe's parents aren't as hands-on as she expected, and he's finding the demands of a newborn, combined with work, overwhelming. Beatrice nodded, pouring them both another glass of tea. The universe has a funny way of balancing things, dear. And Chloe, Eleanor continued, has been making subtle inquiries about reconciliation, but always on their terms, always with the implicit expectation that I'll just fall back into line, back to being treated like a burden who should be grateful for scraps of attention. Eleanor shook her head, a firm resolve in her eyes. I can't go back there, Beatrice. Not for anyone, not even for Lily Grace. Though she missed the tiny, perfect face of her great-granddaughter terribly, the longing was now tempered by a fierce self-respect. Eleanor's new life was rich. Old friends, lively book club discussions, the quiet satisfaction of meaningful volunteer work. She realized her profound loneliness hadn't been an inherent state. It had stemmed from surrounding herself with people who didn't truly value her. Now her life was filled with people who enjoyed her company, respected her wisdom, and saw her for who she truly was. The quiet afternoon was interrupted by the soft chime of her phone. It was Mr. Davies' office. Eleanor, his assistant's voice came through, polite and professional. Just a reminder that Lily Grace's annual trust update is due. David and Chloe will need to schedule a meeting directly with us to acknowledge the trust's ongoing administration. A small, knowing smile played on Eleanor's lips. The wheels were turning. The consequences were unfolding. Later that week, another call came. This one from Susan, her friend from the nursing home. Susan's voice was bubbling with excitement. Eleanor, you won't believe it. My 18-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, called me. She heard the truth about her mother's claims about me being too demanding. She actually came to visit. And she said, Grandma, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just her story. It was a universal truth. She thought of Lily Grace, of the day she would turn 18 and then 25. She would read that letter, her great-grandmother's version of events, the quiet testimony of a love that transcended superficiality and manipulation. She would learn about a legacy that was not about money, but about dignity, self-worth, and the courage to choose herself. Eleanor understood her true gift to Lily Grace was not just financial security or educational opportunities, but autonomy, the information and the means to make her own choices, to see clearly, to understand the nuanced truths of her family. Eleanor had learned her worth was inherent, not dependent on external validation, not on the fickle affections of her son and daughter-in-law. She had found herself building a legacy of dignity and learned that love doesn't require her to make herself small, to shrink to fit into someone else's narrow definition of family. Her life was full of contentment, no longer the desperate quiet of loneliness, but the rich, resonant silence of peace. In 18 years, Lily Grace would learn about a great-grandmother who chose dignity over desperation, and that true family is about chosen value, not merely blood. The quiet rhythm of Eleanor's new life continued to unfold, each day a testament to her renewed sense of self. The garden flourished under her careful hand, the book club offered intellectual sparks, and the nursing home provided a wellspring of connection and purpose. She often thought of Lily Grace, a bittersweet ache sometimes, but mostly a sense of profound hope for the child's future. The knowledge that her great-granddaughter would one day understand, would one day read her letter, brought Eleanor a deep peace. One crisp autumn morning, as Eleanor was watering her prize-winning hydrangeas, her phone rang. It was Mr. Davies. His voice, usually so composed, carried an unusual note of urgency. Eleanor, David and Chloe just left my office. They're quite upset. They insist on speaking with you immediately. Eleanor felt a familiar tightening in her chest, a ghost of her old anxiety, but it quickly faded. Did they finally grasp the full implications of the trust, James? She asked, a knowing smile in her voice. They certainly did, he confirmed. Apparently, they have also been informed that the foundation you've established for isolated elderly individuals has officially been funded with the remainder of your estate. They weren't aware of the full scope until now. Eleanor simply hummed in response. She had always intended for them to discover the truth through the formal channels. It was not about a dramatic reveal, but about undeniable facts. I'm sure they'll call, she said calmly. I'll be here. Less than 10 minutes later, her phone rang again. It was David, his voice sharp with anger, edged with panic. Mom, what is this? Mr. Davies just told us everything. A foundation? What foundation? You're giving away everything to strangers? And Lily Grace can't even touch her money for years, and not without going through lawyers. What have you done? Eleanor closed her eyes, picturing him, red-faced and agitated. The same David who had dismissed her, excluded her, and painted her as needy. David, she began, her voice steady and measured, I have done precisely what I told you I would do. I have planned my estate according to my wishes, to reflect my values, and to ensure my legacy aligns with the life I now choose to live. But this is our family's inheritance, he fumed. It's for your grandchildren. For us. It was, Eleanor corrected gently. But as you and Chloe so meticulously demonstrated, I was not considered part of us. My family, as you defined it, was a world in which I had no place. So I decided to create a legacy for a different kind of family, a family of humanity, of those who truly need and appreciate support. She heard Chloe's agitated voice in the background, a high-pitched protest. She's being vindictive, David. She's punishing us. Eleanor sighed. Chloe, this isn't punishment. This is the natural consequence of your actions. You systematically alienated me, spread false narratives about my mental state, and excluded me from every significant family event. You chose to build a life where I was an inconvenience, a burden. I simply accepted your choice and acted accordingly. David's anger then shifted to pleading. Mom, please. We can fix this. We can change. We can be better. Just tell Mr. Davies to undo this. We'll include you more. We'll have you over for dinner every week. You can see Lily Grace whenever you want. The desperation in his voice was stark, a stark contrast to the casual indifference she had endured for years. It was the desperation of someone realizing the profound cost of their choices, not a genuine desire for reconciliation based on mutual respect. David, Eleanor said, her voice softening, but remaining firm, I appreciate the sudden enthusiasm for my company, but true love and respect are not conditional upon financial gain. They are given freely, consistently, and without expectation of reward. She paused, letting her words sink in. My decision is final. The trust for Lily Grace is irrevocable. The foundation for the elderly is established. This is who I am now. This is my legacy. But what about us? David cried, the plea turning to a wail of genuine distress. What about your son? You had a son, David, Eleanor responded, her voice tinged with a quiet sorrow. And for many years I was a devoted mother. But you chose to redefine our relationship, to push me away, to make me a periphery figure. I simply respected your boundaries. After she hung up, the silence on her porch was profound. Beatrice, who had been listening from her vantage point, gently placed her hand over Eleanor's. That took courage, dear heart, she murmured. Eleanor leaned back in the swing, feeling a mix of sadness and profound relief. She knew David and Chloe would struggle, not just with the financial implications, but with the painful realization that their actions had indeed cost them something invaluable. They had prioritized convenience and a carefully curated image over genuine familial connection. Her own journey had led her to a place of unexpected peace. She was no longer waiting for invitations that wouldn't come, no longer scrutinizing Facebook for glimpses of a life she was excluded from. Her days were now filled with purpose and authentic relationships. The foundation, her true legacy, was already beginning its work, offering comfort and community to those who, like her, had experienced the painful solitude of being forgotten. Eleanor thought of Lily Grace again, growing day by day, oblivious to the storm she had unwittingly unleashed. One day, Lily Grace would read that letter. One day, she would understand that her great-grandmother's love was so fierce, so unwavering, that it demanded truth and dignity, even at the cost of conventional family ties. And perhaps, in that understanding, Lily Grace would learn the true meaning of family, a bond forged not just by blood, but by respect, inclusion, and unconditional love. Eleanor had finally found her own definition of home, not in the empty promises of others, but within herself. The seasons turned, bringing winter's quiet chill, and then the first tender greens of spring. Eleanor's life continued its steady, purposeful course. The calls from David had dwindled, replaced by the occasional stiff email, mostly demanding information about the trust, which Eleanor politely redirected to Mr. Davies. Chloe's attempts at contact were even rarer, brief, almost perfunctory messages on holidays, devoid of any real warmth. Eleanor recognized them for what they were, attempts to maintain a veneer of normalcy, perhaps for public consumption, or simply to alleviate their own guilt. She responded with equal politeness, always keeping a healthy distance. Her foundation, the Eleanor home, was slowly but surely taking shape. She'd found a charming old house with a large garden nestled in a quiet part of town and had begun overseeing its renovation. It was to be a place of respite, a community hub for isolated seniors, offering classes, communal meals, and companionship. The joy she found in this project was immense, a stark contrast to the quiet despair she had once carried. She worked alongside architects and contractors, her mind sharp, her spirit invigorated. It was a tangible manifestation of her values, a legacy far more meaningful than any inherited wealth. Her relationship with Emily, too, had undergone a subtle but significant shift. Emily, initially defensive and dismissive, had started calling Eleanor more frequently, her conversations less about soccer tournaments and more about her own struggles. She often complained about the pressure David and Chloe were putting on her, hinting at financial expectations they now had. Emily expressed frustration with David's constant complaining about his financial situation and Chloe's thinly veiled resentment towards Eleanor. Gradually, a crack appeared in Emily's perception. She began to see the entitlement, the manipulative patterns Eleanor had described, reflected in her brother and sister-in-law's current behavior. "Mom," Emily admitted one afternoon, her voice hesitant, "I never realized how much David and Chloe relied on your support. They seemed genuinely shocked that you wouldn't just provide it automatically." Eleanor listened, offering empathy without judgment. "Everyone makes choices, Emily," she said simply, "and choices have consequences." This burgeoning understanding with Emily was a fragile but welcome development. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet, but it was a step towards a more honest and authentic connection, free from Chloe's distorting influence. One afternoon during her volunteer shift at the nursing home, Eleanor was helping a new resident, an elderly woman named Martha, unpack some cherished belongings. Martha, her eyes watery, held up a faded photograph. "My son," she whispered, "he moved away years ago. Never calls. I don't even know if he remembers my birthday anymore." Eleanor felt a familiar ache, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of purpose. "Martha," she said, her voice gentle, "I know exactly how that feels. But we don't have to be defined by who calls us or who forgets. We define ourselves by how we choose to live, by the kindness we show, by the connections we make, even later in life." She shared stories of the Eleanor home, of the community she was building, of the joy she found in her new purpose. Martha listened, a faint smile touching her lips. Eleanor realized her own journey was now a source of comfort and inspiration for others. Lily Grace remained a constant, quiet presence in Eleanor's thoughts. She imagined the day, 18 years hence, when a young woman, perhaps with her great-grandmother's spirit, would walk into Mr. Davies' office. She would learn about the trust, about the letter, about the love that flowed from a great-grandmother she barely knew, a love that bypassed the complexities and disappointments of her parents. Eleanor hoped that letter would not just provide financial security, but also a sense of identity, a connection to a deeper lineage of strength and resilience. The foundation, the Eleanor home, opened its doors in early summer, a vibrant hub of activity. The grand opening was a modest affair, filled with laughter, music, and the joyful chatter of newfound friends. Beatrice was there, beaming with pride. Emily came, bringing flowers, a genuine warmth in her hug. Other friends from her book club, fellow volunteers from the nursing home, and several of the home's first residents raised a toast to Eleanor. As she stood amidst the joyful crowd, Eleanor felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was her true family, chosen not by blood, but by shared values and mutual respect. She saw a woman, perhaps in her late 70s, sitting quietly in a corner, tears welling in her eyes as she watched the lively scene. Eleanor approached her gently. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. The woman nodded, wiping a tear. "Yes, I am," she whispered. "It's just, I haven't felt this sense of belonging in so long. Not since my husband passed. My children, they're busy, you know. They mean well, but—" She trailed off, her eyes meeting Eleanor's in a shared understanding. "I know," Eleanor said softly, taking the woman's hand. "But you're home now. You're among people who see you, who value you, and you belong here." As the evening wound down, Eleanor reflected on her journey. She had faced betrayal, loneliness, and the painful realization that her own son and daughter-in-law had actively sought to erase her from their lives. But from that pain, she had forged something beautiful and enduring. She had built a new life, not just for herself, but for others. She had found her voice, asserted her worth, and defined her own legacy. The quiet desperation of her past was gone, replaced by a vibrant, purposeful serenity. She was not just surviving, she was thriving, living a life rich with meaning and authentic connection, a testament to the power of choosing oneself. Months turned into a year, then two. The Eleanor home flourished, becoming a beacon of community and companionship for the elderly in the town. Eleanor, now 80, presided over it with quiet grace and unwavering dedication. She was not merely its founder, but its heart, a testament to the idea that one could transform profound personal hurt into a wellspring of generosity and connection. Her days were full, rich with purpose and genuine affection from her new chosen family. David's calls became almost non-existent. The few times he did contact her, it was usually to complain about some financial strain or to indirectly express his bewilderment at her unwavering stance. He seemed incapable of grasping that her decisions were not about vengeance, but about self-preservation and a refusal to be disrespected. Chloe, for her part, remained completely silent, her social media feed now meticulously curated, devoid of any mention of family gatherings or celebrations that might inadvertently reveal Eleanor's continued exclusion. It was as if Eleanor had been successfully airbrushed from their public narrative, just as she had been from their private lives. Emily, however, continued to evolve. Her visits to the Eleanor home became more frequent, and her conversations with Eleanor grew deeper. She confided her growing disillusionment with David and Chloe, whose expectations seemed to expand with Eleanor's silence. Emily expressed genuine regret for having been so easily swayed by Chloe's narrative, for not seeing her mother's pains sooner. "Mom," Emily admitted one afternoon during a quiet tea at the home, "I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should have seen what was happening. I was just so caught up in David and Chloe's drama, I didn't realize how much you were hurting." Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "It's all right, my dear," she said softly. "You see it now. That's what matters." Their relationship, once strained by distance and subtle manipulation, was slowly but surely being rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Emily was finally seeing Eleanor, not as a needy parent, but as a strong, resilient woman who had found her own way. One of the most fulfilling aspects of Eleanor's new life was witnessing the positive impact of her foundation. She saw residents who had arrived withdrawn and lonely bloom under the warmth of companionship and shared activities. She listened to their stories, each one a poignant reminder of the universal human need for connection and belonging. Many of them had experienced similar forms of quiet abandonment, children too busy or too self-absorbed to notice their parents fading into the periphery. Eleanor's home offered them not just a place to belong, but a validation of their inherent worth. Occasionally, Eleanor would hear snippets of news about Lily Grace through Emily. She was a bright, lively toddler, already showing signs of a strong personality. Eleanor cherished these updates, knowing that a part of her heart still belonged to her great-granddaughter. The trust, steadily growing under Mr. Davies's careful stewardship, remained a silent promise, a future connection waiting to unfold. Eleanor often imagined the day, still many years away, when Lily Grace would receive that letter, written by her great-grandmother, a narrative free from the distortions of her parents. On her 80th birthday, the Eleanor home threw her a surprise party. The large communal dining room was filled with laughter, music, and the joyful faces of residents, volunteers, and her friends. Beatrice toasted her, her voice thick with emotion. Emily, who had flown in for the occasion, gave a heartfelt speech, acknowledging Eleanor's strength and resilience and expressing her love. As Eleanor stood there, surrounded by so much genuine affection, she felt a profound sense of completeness. This was the family she had built, a testament to enduring love and the power of human connection. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed and the quiet of the home settled in, Eleanor sat by the fireplace in her small apartment within the facility. She held a faded photograph of Arthur, his kind eyes smiling back at her. "You would be proud, my dear," she whispered. "So proud." She thought of David and Chloe, still locked in their resentment and incomprehension. She harbored no ill will towards them, only a quiet acceptance of their choices and the path they had set for themselves. She no longer wished to change them or to force a connection that wasn't genuine or one. Her peace was too precious. Eleanor had learned that true fulfillment came not from external validation, but from internal congruence. Her actions, her values, and her life were now in perfect alignment. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her exclusion into inclusion, and her quiet desperation into a vibrant, meaningful existence. She had, in the truest sense, found her own way home. The story wasn't over, not entirely, for Lily Grace's chapter was yet to be written. But Eleanor's chapter of quiet suffering had ended, replaced by a legacy of dignity, love, and unwavering self-worth. Years continued to pass, bringing with them the gentle ebb and flow of life at the Eleanor home. Eleanor remained at its helm, a steady presence, her silver hair now streaked with more white, but her eyes still sharp and full of warmth. The foundation had grown, opening 2 more small community centers in neighboring towns, offering similar support and companionship to isolated seniors. Eleanor's vision, born from her own profound loneliness, had blossomed into a thriving network of care. David and Chloe's presence in her life remained a distant echo. Their calls were now limited to once or twice a year, usually brief, formal, and clearly born out of a sense of obligation rather than genuine affection. They still hadn't grasped the fundamental truth of Eleanor's actions. They still perceived her decisions as a punishment, a calculated act of revenge, rather than a necessary act of self-preservation and dignity. Eleanor, however, no longer sought their understanding. Her peace was too well-earned to be disturbed by their persistent incomprehension. Emily had become a constant, loving presence in Eleanor's life. She visited regularly, often bringing her own children, who had grown into polite and respectful teenagers. They admired their grandmother's strength and vision, often volunteering at the Eleanor home during their school breaks. Emily often brought news of Lily Grace, who was now a vibrant, curious 10-year-old. Emily recounted how Lily Grace was an avid reader, an inquisitive child, always asking questions. Eleanor cherished these updates, knowing that with each passing year, Lily Grace was growing closer to the day she would uncover the truth. "She's so bright, Mom," Emily shared one afternoon, as they sat in Eleanor's sun-drenched office at the home. "Always questioning everything. I can already tell she's going to be someone who digs for answers." Eleanor smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Good, that's exactly what she'll need to do." The foundation's success had garnered some local media attention. A small newspaper article detailing the Eleanor home and its inspiring founder had even made its way to David and Chloe. The article, praising Eleanor's generosity and resilience, had apparently caused a stir in their household. David had called, his voice laced with bitterness. "Mom, why are you doing this? Making a spectacle of yourself. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" Eleanor had calmly countered. "David, I am building a legacy of compassion and community. There is nothing embarrassing about that. Perhaps you should reflect on what you find truly embarrassing." He had hung up in frustration, still unable to see past his own ego. Eleanor, however, found immense joy in the recognition her work received. It wasn't about fame, but about validating the importance of her mission. She spoke at local events, advocating for elderly rights and combating social isolation. Her voice, once silenced and dismissed, now resonated with purpose and authority. She found herself surrounded by people who listened, who valued her insights, and who genuinely admired her strength. One chilly afternoon, as Eleanor was overseeing the preparations for the home's annual holiday bazaar, Mr. Davies called. His voice, for once, was genuinely cheerful. "Eleanor, I just wanted to let you know, we received a letter from Lily Grace today." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "A letter? But she's only 10. "Indeed," Mr. Davies confirmed, a chuckle in his voice. "She wrote to inquire about the trust fund. Her parents, it seems, mentioned it to her, perhaps hoping to entice her with the idea of future wealth. But Lily Grace, being the intelligent young lady she clearly is, asked some very astute questions about its nature, its origins, and why she wouldn't have access to it until she was much older. She wanted to know why Grandma Eleanor didn't give the money to her mommy and daddy." Eleanor smiled. The seeds were being sown. Lily Grace was beginning to ask the right questions. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that the trust was established with great love and foresight by her great-grandmother, and that the details would become clear when she was older," Mr. Davies explained. "I also assured her that there was a very special letter waiting for her, and she was absolutely fascinated by that." A warmth spread through Eleanor. This was it, the beginning of the end of the narrative David and Chloe had tried to impose. Lily Grace, with her innate curiosity, was already chipping away at the carefully constructed wall of silence and distortion. Eleanor looked out at the bustling activity of the holiday bazaar, the residents happily chatting, the volunteers busy setting up stalls. It was a vibrant scene of connection and joy, a stark contrast to the quiet, lonely birthday she had endured all those years ago. She had lost a son and a daughter-in-law in a way, but she had gained so much more. She had found her purpose, her voice, in a loving, authentic community. Her legacy was not just about money, it was about the profound human need for dignity, inclusion, and the unwavering belief in one's own worth. And soon, Lily Grace would understand. The years continued their steady march, transforming Lily Grace from a curious 10-year-old into an insightful, independent teenager. Eleanor, now well into her 80s, remained a vibrant force at the Eleanor home, her energy seemingly undimmed by time. The foundation continued to thrive, a testament to her vision, providing solace and community to countless seniors. David and Chloe's contact with Eleanor had become almost non-existent. The bitterness and resentment over the estate decisions had seemingly solidified into a wall of silence. They communicated almost exclusively through Emily, who found herself increasingly caught in the middle, yet fiercely loyal to her mother. Emily's own relationship with David and Chloe had grown strained, burdened by their constant complaints about their financial situation and thinly veiled accusations against Eleanor. Emily often shared her frustrations with Eleanor, expressing a deepening understanding of the manipulative dynamics her mother had once endured alone. "They just can't let it go, Mom," Emily lamented during one of her visits. "Every conversation eventually circles back to your unfair decisions. They genuinely believe they were entitled to your entire estate. It's exhausting." Eleanor would simply listen, her gaze serene. "Their perception is their reality, Emily. Mine is my own." The local community continued to embrace Eleanor and her foundation. She was a respected figure, a symbol of resilience and profound generosity. Her story, though never fully publicized by her, was an open secret among her circle, a quiet testament to a woman who had chosen dignity over desperation. Then came the day. Lily Grace's 18th birthday. Eleanor had marked it on her calendar years in advance, a quiet anticipation building within her. She knew that today, or very soon, Lily Grace would walk into Mr. Davies' office, a young woman ready to step into her financial inheritance. But more importantly, she would step into her truth. Mr. Davies called Eleanor late that afternoon, his voice filled with a quiet satisfaction. "Eleanor, I just had the most delightful visit. Lily Grace was here." Eleanor's heart leaped. "And?" she prompted, barely able to contain her excitement. "She's a remarkable young woman," Mr. Davies recounted, "poised, intelligent, and deeply curious. She was quite overwhelmed by the sum, of course, But her first questions weren't about what she could buy. They were about the conditions, about the letter, and about you. Eleanor smiled, tears pricking her eyes. She read the letter? Indeed, he confirmed. She read every word, slowly, carefully. I watched her face as she did. There was confusion at first, then a growing understanding, and finally, a profound sadness, and then a quiet determination. What did she say? Eleanor asked, her voice trembling slightly. She asked if she could have a copy of the full trust documents and also if she could contact you directly. I gave her your number, of course. She said she had a lot to think about and a lot of questions for her great-grandmother. Eleanor hung up the phone, a profound sense of closure washing over her. The first domino had fallen. The truth, meticulously preserved for 18 years, was now in the hands of the very person it was meant to empower. The call from Lily Grace came 2 days later. Eleanor was sitting in her favorite armchair at the Eleanor home, reading a book, when her phone chimed. The caller ID simply read, "Unknown number." She answered, a quiet certainty in her heart. "Hello?" Eleanor's voice was soft. "Hello, is this Eleanor?" A young woman's voice, clear and strong, came through the line. "This is Lily Grace, your great-granddaughter." "Lily Grace," Eleanor breathed, a warmth spreading through her chest. "It's wonderful to hear from you, dear." I I just wanted to call and thank you," Lily Grace began, her voice a little hesitant. "Mr. Davies gave me the letter and the trust. I read it, everything." A pause. "I had no idea about any of it. There was a lot you weren't told, my dear," Eleanor said gently. "Why?" Lily Grace asked, the raw confusion evident in her voice. "Why would they do that? Why would they tell me you were just eccentric and a bit difficult?" "Some people find it easier to create their own narrative than to face uncomfortable truths," Eleanor explained, choosing her words carefully. "It's a way of managing their own guilt, perhaps, or simply to avoid any inconvenience." "The letter," Lily Grace continued, her voice gaining strength. "It explains so much about my parents, about you, about everything. I don't understand why they would lie to me for so long." "Sometimes, dear," Eleanor said, her voice filled with a quiet wisdom, "the truth is inconvenient for those who wish to control a story. But the truth always finds its way out eventually." They spoke for nearly an hour, Lily Grace asking questions, Eleanor answering with honesty and grace, not with bitterness, but with a desire for understanding. Eleanor recounted her version of events, not to disparage David and Chloe, but to explain the choices she had made and the values she now embodied. Lily Grace listened intently, absorbing every word. "I'd really like to meet you, great-grandmother Eleanor," Lily Grace finally said. "I want to hear more. I want to understand." "I would like that very much, Lily Grace," Eleanor replied, a genuine smile illuminating her face. The phone call ended, but a new chapter had just begun. The legacy of dignity, love, and truth was finally unfurling its wings, carried forth by a young woman ready to discover her own path, informed by the unwavering love of her great-grandmother. Eleanor knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that the true family, chosen by value and not just blood, was now taking its rightful shape. The first meeting between Eleanor and Lily Grace was a tentative dance of curiosity and revelation. Lily Grace arrived at the Eleanor home a week after their phone call, a tall, graceful young woman with her great-grandmother's intelligent eyes and a quiet resolve that belied her youth. She carried a copy of the letter Eleanor had written, its pages now creased from repeated readings. Eleanor welcomed her with an open heart and a warm hug, a gesture of affection that felt both familiar and entirely new. They sat in Eleanor's sunlit office, surrounded by the quiet hum of the thriving community Eleanor had built. Lily Grace was hesitant at first, her questions tinged with a delicate balance of respect and bewilderment. "Great-grandmother Eleanor," Lily Grace began, her voice soft, I can't wrap my head around it. My parents always said you were, well, that you chose to be alone, that you preferred your quiet life. They never mentioned any of this." She gestured vaguely to the letter in her hand. Eleanor listened patiently, her gaze kind. "Sometimes, my dear, it is easier for people to believe a comfortable lie than an inconvenient truth. Your parents had a narrative they wished to maintain, one where my absence was a choice I made rather than a consequence of their actions. Over cups of tea, Eleanor recounted her story, not with bitterness or anger, but with the quiet dignity of a woman who had found peace. She spoke of the gradual exclusion, the missed birthdays, the small gatherings that were anything but. She explained the gaslighting, the manipulation, the way her natural desire for connection had been reframed as neediness. Lily Grace listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to sadness, and finally to a deep, thoughtful understanding. And the foundation, Lily Grace said, her eyes sweeping around the warm, inviting space of the Eleanor home. This is what you did with the rest of your estate? This is incredible. My parents, they just said you gave it all to strangers. Eleanor smiled. These strangers, Lily Grace, are people who understand what it feels like to be overlooked, forgotten, or simply deemed too much trouble. Here, they find community, dignity, in a place where they are truly valued. This is my legacy, dear. Not just for money, but for human connection. Lily Grace spent the entire afternoon with Eleanor, exploring the Eleanor home, meeting the residents, and listening to their stories. She saw firsthand the vibrant community Eleanor had cultivated, a testament to her great-grandmother's unwavering spirit. She observed the genuine warmth and respect with which Eleanor was regarded, a stark contrast to the dismissive portrait her parents had painted. By the time Emily arrived to pick Lily Grace up, a profound shift had occurred. Lily Grace's eyes held a new light, a deeper understanding. "Mom," Lily Grace said to Emily, a quiet determination in her voice, "I want to come back. I want to learn more about great-grandmother Eleanor and about the home." Emily, witnessing the burgeoning connection between her mother and niece, felt a surge of pride and relief. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, her eyes welling with happy tears. The consequences of Eleanor's choices continued to unfold. David and Chloe were blindsided by Lily Grace's newfound awareness. They tried to dismiss Eleanor's account, to discredit her, to reinforce their old narrative. But Lily Grace, armed with the truth from Eleanor's letter and their direct conversations, was no longer easily swayed. She challenged their excuses, questioned their omissions, and demanded honesty. The comfortable lie they had lived for so long began to unravel under the relentless light of her intelligence. Lily Grace began spending more and more time at the Eleanor home. She volunteered, she helped with activities, and she immersed herself in Eleanor's life. She saw the genuine love and respect that flowed freely within its walls, a stark contrast to the strained, transactional nature of her own home life. She learned about integrity, about resilience, and about the power of choosing one's own path, even when it meant challenging the very people who raised you. Eleanor, watching Lily Grace blossom, felt an immense satisfaction. The trust she had established was not just financial, it was a trust in Lily Grace's ability to discern truth, to forge her own values, and to live a life aligned with integrity. She had given Lily Grace not just wealth, but freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom to connect authentically, and freedom to define her own family. The painful chapter of Eleanor's life, the one defined by exclusion and quiet suffering, was now firmly in the past. Her present was vibrant, purposeful, and filled with authentic connection. And her future, through Lily Grace, carried the promise of a legacy far richer and more enduring than any monetary inheritance. She had not only reclaimed her own dignity, but had also provided a beacon of hope and truth for the next generation. The bond between Eleanor and Lily Grace deepened with each passing month. Lily Grace, now attending college, dedicated her free time to the Eleanor home. She shadowed Eleanor, learning about the intricacies of running a nonprofit, the challenges of elder care, and the profound joy of fostering community. She saw Eleanor not just as a great-grandmother, but as a mentor, a trailblazer, and a living testament to resilience. Her relationship with her parents, David and Chloe, grew increasingly strained. Lily Grace confronted them repeatedly, armed with the truths she had learned from Eleanor and the glaring inconsistencies in their own narratives. David and Chloe, incapable of genuine introspection, doubled down on their victimhood, accusing Eleanor of manipulating Lily Grace and poisoning their daughter against them. "She's just bitter, Lily," David would argue, his face flushed. "She's upset that we moved on, that we built our own lives. She wants to punish us." "And the money, of course," Chloe would add, her voice dripping with resentment. She's always been obsessed with money. This is all about control. But Lily Grace was no longer a naive child. She saw through their deflections. She understood that Eleanor's actions were about self-respect, not revenge. She saw that her great-grandmother had found genuine happiness and purpose, while her parents remained trapped in a cycle of bitterness and blame. Lily Grace gradually spent more time at Eleanor's side than at home, finding true family and acceptance within the walls of the Eleanor home. Emily, witnessing the growing chasm between her brother and her niece, stepped in as a mediator, though her loyalties now lay firmly with Eleanor. She tried to encourage David and Chloe to listen, to understand, to genuinely reconcile, but their pride and resentment proved too strong. "They just can't see past their own expectations, Mom," Emily sighed during one of her visits to Eleanor. "They genuinely believe they were owed your entire estate, and they can't forgive you for choosing otherwise. And now, losing Lily Grace's affection is just another blow they blame on you." Eleanor listened, her gaze serene. "Love is freely given, Emily, not demanded. And truth, once revealed, cannot be easily unlearned." Lily Grace's experiences at the Eleanor home began to shape her academic path. She switched her major to social work, driven by a newfound passion for advocating for vulnerable populations. She spoke eloquently about the importance of intergenerational connections and the often overlooked struggles of the elderly. Eleanor watched her great-granddaughter, a quiet pride swelling in her chest, knowing that Lily Grace was not just inheriting wealth, but also a profound legacy of compassion and purpose. The community Eleanor had built rallied around them, offering Lily Grace support and mentorship. Beatrice, still sharp and witty, became a surrogate grandmother, sharing stories of Eleanor's early life and reinforcing the values of strength and integrity. The residents of the Eleanor home adored Lily Grace, seeing in her a vibrant embodiment of Eleanor's enduring spirit. As Lily Grace approached her 25th birthday, the next crucial milestone for her trust, she made a pivotal decision. She informed David and Chloe that she would be moving out of their home and into a small apartment on the grounds of the Eleanor home, where she would live and work, fully dedicating herself to the foundation. David and Chloe were furious. "You're abandoning us for that old woman," Chloe shrieked, her carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. "I'm not abandoning you," Lily Grace responded, her voice calm but firm. "I'm choosing where I belong. I'm choosing a place where I am valued, respected, and where I can make a real difference." Great-grandmother Eleanor taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who sees you, and who helps you grow into the person you are meant to be. On her 25th birthday, Lily Grace formally met with Mr. Davies to access the final portion of her trust. She did so with Eleanor by her side, not because she needed Eleanor's permission, but because she wanted her great-grandmother to share in the moment. The funds, substantial by any measure, were not squandered. Instead, Lily Grace meticulously planned how to use a significant portion to expand the Eleanor home, funding new programs and initiatives to reach even more isolated seniors. Eleanor, watching Lily Grace outline her plans with such passion and clarity, realized her legacy was not just in the foundation she had built, but in the values she had instilled. Lily Grace was not just a recipient of wealth. She was an inheritor of wisdom, integrity, and a profound commitment to human connection. The story had come full circle. The initial act of betrayal, the quiet suffering, the brave decision to reclaim her dignity, all had culminated in this beautiful, unexpected outcome. Eleanor had lost a son and daughter-in-law to their own narrow-mindedness, but she had gained a legacy that would ripple through generations, transforming lives and upholding the true meaning of family. Her quiet revenge was not about inflicting pain, but about illuminating truth, fostering growth, and building a world where no one felt invisible. With Lily Grace now a full partner in the Eleanor home and her designated successor, Eleanor found a deep sense of contentment. Her work, once a solitary mission, was now shared, invigorated by Lily Grace's youthful energy and modern perspectives. Together, they expanded the foundation's reach, developing innovative programs that bridged generational gaps and brought even more vibrant life to their communities. Eleanor's initial vision, born from personal pain, had truly blossomed into a thriving, intergenerational haven. David and Chloe's absence from Eleanor's life became absolute. Their resentment, unable to penetrate Eleanor's unwavering peace or Lily Grace's firm boundaries, had curdled into a permanent estrangement. They rarely spoke to Emily, who maintained a loving connection with her mother and niece, but grew increasingly distant from her brother and sister-in-law. Emily, now a regular volunteer and board member for the Eleanor home, found her true family and purpose intertwined with her mother's legacy. One evening, as Eleanor and Lily Grace were reviewing plans for a new mentorship program at the home, Lily Grace paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Great-grandmother Eleanor," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about the letter you wrote me, and about everything that happened." Eleanor met her gaze, a gentle invitation to continue. "It must have been so incredibly painful for you," Lily Grace continued, her voice soft with empathy. "To be so deliberately pushed away by your own son. To feel so invisible. I can't imagine enduring that for so long." "It was, dear," Eleanor admitted, a faint memory of the old ache stirring, but quickly fading. "It was profoundly lonely. But sometimes profound pain can be a powerful catalyst for change. It taught me that my worth was not dependent on their validation, and that I had the power to create my own happiness, my own family, my own legacy." "And you did," Lily Grace said, her eyes shining with admiration. "You created something beautiful out of that pain. Something that has helped so many people, including me." She smiled. "You taught me that dignity isn't just about what you keep, but about what you choose to give and how you choose to live." Eleanor felt a surge of warmth, a profound sense of validation that transcended any need for David or Chloe's understanding. This was her true legacy, spoken aloud by the person she had fought so hard to empower. As the years advanced, Eleanor gracefully stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the Eleanor home, ceding the leadership entirely to Lily Grace. She remained its cherished matriarch, a wise counsel and an inspiring presence. But the reins were firmly in her great-granddaughter's capable hands. Lily Grace, vibrant and visionary, expanded the foundation's outreach, implementing new technologies to connect isolated seniors and fostering partnerships with local universities for research on aging and community well-being. The Eleanor home became a model for intergenerational community centers across the country, its success a testament to Eleanor's initial courage and Lily Grace's continued dedication. Articles were written, awards were bestowed, and Eleanor's story, once a personal tragedy, became an inspiring narrative of resilience, purpose, and the transformative power of love. Eleanor lived to see her 95th birthday, a joyous celebration filled with the laughter of residents, the heartfelt tributes of volunteers, and the unwavering love of Emily and Lily Grace. She looked around the bustling, vibrant community she had built, a life teeming with authentic connection, and knew that she had truly found her place in the world. Her final years were marked not by loneliness, but by a profound sense of peace and fulfillment, surrounded by a family she had chosen and who had chosen her back. One quiet afternoon, as she sat in her favorite armchair overlooking the lively garden of the Eleanor home, Lily Grace beside her, Eleanor gently took her great-granddaughter's hand. "You know, my dear," she said, her voice soft but clear, "Arthur, your great-grandfather, he always believed in the power of family. He would have loved this. He would have loved you." Lily Grace squeezed her hand. "He lives on through you, great-grandmother Eleanor, and through this home, and through all the lives you've touched." Eleanor closed her eyes, a contented smile on her lips. She had built a world where dignity was paramount, where kindness was currency, and where no one was left feeling invisible. Her quiet revenge had transcended personal grievance, becoming a lasting monument to the human spirit's capacity for love, resilience, and unwavering self-worth. She had not only reclaimed her own narrative, but had ensured that countless others would find theirs within the embrace of the Eleanor home. Her story was a testament to the idea that even in the face of profound betrayal, one could forge a legacy of enduring light. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep, just a few months shy of her 96th birthday, surrounded by the quiet comfort of the Eleanor home, the place that had become her true sanctuary and lasting legacy. Her passing was not a moment of sorrowful end, but a celebration of a life lived with extraordinary dignity, resilience, and purpose. The funeral was held in the large communal hall of the Eleanor home, a space Eleanor had personally designed for gatherings. It was overflowing with people, the residents she had championed, the volunteers she had inspired, the friends who had stood by her, and the local community members whose lives she had touched. Emily was there, her eyes filled with tears, but also a profound sense of pride, standing alongside her own grown children, who now understood the depth of their grandmother's strength. Lily Grace, now a poised and respected woman in her early 30s, delivered the eulogy. She spoke not just as Eleanor's great-granddaughter, but as her protege and successor, her voice resonating with clarity and deep affection. "My great-grandmother Eleanor," Lily Grace began, her gaze sweeping across the faces in the hall, "was a woman who understood, perhaps more deeply than anyone, the true meaning of connection. She taught me that family isn't just a matter of blood, but a matter of choice, of respect, and of unwavering love. She taught me that true wealth isn't measured in possessions, but in the richness of human relationships and the impact we make on the lives of others." She recounted Eleanor's early years, her quiet life with Arthur, and then, with raw honesty, spoke of the pain of exclusion, the betrayal, and the profound loneliness Eleanor had endured. She spoke of the birthday betrayal, the 200 guests versus Eleanor's empty table, and the cruel narrative her parents had spun. But then her voice strengthened. Lily Grace transitioned to Eleanor's incredible transformation. "From that deep well of hurt," Lily Grace continued, "great-grandmother Eleanor chose not bitterness, but a fierce, dignified resolve. She chose to build. She chose to connect. She chose to turn her own experience of feeling invisible into a beacon for countless others. The Eleanor home is not just a building, it is a living testament to her spirit. It is a place where dignity is restored, where companionship flourishes, and where every single person is seen, heard, and valued. This is her true legacy." She then spoke directly to the profound lessons Eleanor had instilled in her. "She taught me that our worth is inherent, not dependent on external validation. She taught me to question narratives, to seek truth, and to always stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. She didn't just give me financial security, she gave me the tools to live a life of integrity and purpose." David and Chloe were not present. They had made their choice many years ago, and Eleanor, in turn, had made hers. Their absence was not a void in the ceremony, but a quiet affirmation of Eleanor's liberation. Her world was now filled with the warmth of genuine connection, a testament to the fact that she had indeed built a far richer, more meaningful family. After the service, as the guests lingered, sharing stories and tears, Lily Grace approached Emily. "Aunt Emily," she said softly, "I know Mom and Dad aren't here, but I truly believe great-grandmother Eleanor found peace. She found her own way home." Emily nodded, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "She did, Lily, and she paved a way for us too. She taught us all that love doesn't require us to make ourselves small." And in the years that followed, Lily Grace continued to lead the Eleanor home with the same passion and wisdom Eleanor had embodied. The foundation thrived, expanding its reach, becoming a national model for elder care and community building. Eleanor's story, now openly shared and celebrated, became an inspiration to others facing similar family challenges. A powerful reminder that it is never too late to reclaim one's dignity and build a life of purpose. The trust Eleanor had established for Lily Grace continued to serve its purpose, not just as a source of wealth, but as a symbolic reminder of a great-grandmother's unwavering love and foresight. Lily Grace, in turn, ensured that the spirit of that love permeated every aspect of the Eleanor home, creating a lasting legacy that would touch generations to come. Eleanor, the woman who was once deemed too much and inconvenient, had, in the end, left behind a world that was infinitely richer for her presence, a world where her quiet courage continued to echo, a testament to the enduring power of choosing oneself and creating a legacy of love and dignity.